It's the real news. I'm Aaron Mater. Attorney General Jeff Sessions says there's a new crackdown on government leaks.
Leaks are incredibly damaging to our intelligence mission and capabilities. Simply put, these leaks hurt our country. All of us in government can do better. This culture of leaking must stop.
Sessions says the Justice Department has tripled its leak investigations and created a new FBI unit for that purpose. He has also announced a review of limits on media subpoenas. Marcy Wheeler is a journalist who covers national security and civil liberties. Her website is mtwheel.net. Marcy, welcome.
Good to be here, Aaron.
Thanks for joining us. I want to start by playing you a bit more of what Sessions had to say. Here he is talking about this review of media subpoenas.
We respect the important role that the press plays and will give them respect, but it is not unlimited. They cannot place lives at risk with impunity. We must balance the press's role with protecting our national security and the lives of those who serve in the intelligence community, the armed forces, and all law-abiding Americans.
So that's Sessions saying or suggesting that the media risks lives with impunity. Marcy, what do you make of what he's saying there?
Well, it's interesting because the leaks that are of concern these days are the ones coming out of the White House. And there's none of them that I can think of, aside from the one where Donald Trump shared information about an ISIS person that Israel had recruited. Aside from that one, I can't think of anyone that credibly endangered the lives of Americans. So maybe he's going after the president. I'm not actually sure.
Which would make sense, perhaps, because the president has been going after him, right? But let me ask you also about this announcement then, creation of a new unit within the FBI to go after leaks. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm hoping we can call it the Plumbers, just in honor of the old Nixon anti-leak campaign. You know, it's interesting because they're rolling this out after a new FBI director got sworn in, Christopher Wray, and it's not clear he was involved in it. It's not clear what the advantage of pulling FBI officers off of other kinds of cases, such as, say, counterintelligence investigations into Russian tampering in the election, pulling them off of those kinds of investigations and putting them on basically trying to hunt down the press. So I'm really curious about the trade-offs that Jeff Sessions has decided, under threat of losing his job, are the right ones to make for American security.
You mentioned Nixon. Do you think that we're seeing a revival of the kind of tactics we saw in that era?
Well, look, I think there are, I mean, I said earlier, I don't think the leaks in question have endangered lives. I do think a number of the leaks of FISA transcripts, right, of what Mike Flynn said to Sergei Kislyak, the Russian ambassador, the leaks of President Trump's conversations with the Mexican and Australian presidents. I think those are norm-breaking leaks. Those are a bit alarming because they will make it hard for national security institutions to remain in place in the future. But first of all, those leaks came from, at least the transcript ones came from the president's own White House. So a lot of it is about the president being so inept and so unable to keep his administration under control. And then the other thing, I keep thinking about is, with all these leaks, would we have been investigating the degree to which the president is compromised by the inability to put national security at the forefront? I mean, we're going to debate these leaks forever. I think the way they'll be rolled out will be rolled out in a way to tamp down any kind of dissent to the president. So that's a real concern. But I also think that, we're going to have a real debate about the importance of these leaks to American democracy. And I think it may end up that this attempt to crack down on leaks is going to create a backlash.
And let's talk a bit more about the media component here, because we heard that clip of Sessions announcing this review of media subpoenas. From the point of view of a White House that might want to go after journalists and their ability to protect their sources, what might they be trying to do here, and what's at stake?
Well, so remember that in 2013, after really embarrassing itself and deciding that it had overstepped what was reasonable, the Holder Department of Justice had rolled out new promises to the press, which were basically the same old promises. They weren't going to do things like call journalists unindicted co-conspirators. They weren't going to do things like pull the call records for the entire DC office of the AP, both of which I think they had done, because the backlash was so fierce and because they really hadn't gotten any value out of going after, in one case, a Fox journalist, in the other case, 2 AP journalists. They I think, really tried to take out those 2 AP journalists and neutralize them. It didn't work. They're both, they were Matapuzzo and Adam Goldman, who are both still reporting. So, if you guys couldn't take out Adam Goldman, Matapuzzo 4 years ago, I don't see how going after them again is really going to work. So it's sort of yet another effort to make it easier to figure out who is talking to journalists. There are a lot more tools out there. We know even people in the White House, even people like Jared Kushner, are using these tools now. So I'm not all that optimistic that this is going to do anything except DOJ an opportunity to politicize, to go after the press itself.
Okay, and speaking of politicizing, I'm wondering if perhaps the pressure that Sessions has been under from Trump that we mentioned before might have factored into his announcement about these leaks, trying to appear tough to his president. I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on that.
Well, it's not new. Remember that Mike Pompeo, a couple months ago, basically said, we think we're going to go after WikiLeaks and effectively prosecute a publisher and create a really terrible precedent. That is something that the Holder DOJ, which was really terrible on leaks. I mean, they had gone after more leakers than any DOJ in the past. That's something that was a bridge too far for Holder. Mike Pompeo basically said, we're gonna do that. And so it's not surprising that Sessions has gotten us to that place. You're right. In the wake of this kind of threat of being fired by Trump, it does seem like Sessions is making these decisions. And again, adding a whole new department to the FBI, apparently without the input or without the, Christopher Wray was not at today's press conference. So it's not clear whether Christopher Wray, the new FBI director, is on board with this. So it does seem poorly thought out. They're not meeting with the press until Monday. So they're going to, they're doing everything backwards. They're making Wray look bad in his first days on the job. Doesn't look good for the DOJ.
And finally, Marcy, you have sources inside the intelligence community. You talk to people in Washington. What are you hearing right now in terms of the mood right now, the prevailing mood inside the security establishment, people who work in intelligence, about the culture of leaks and the culture that has been fostered under President Trump?
Well, those kinds of people don't necessarily talk to me because I'm not in DC. But look, I think that you've got Trump who can't manage his White House, right? There's this hope that Kelly, as White House Chief of Staff, will finally be able to stop the backbiting within the White House. And you've got members of the intelligence community who are genuinely concerned about this nutcase who is running the government. That shouldn't excuse their leaks, but I think DOJ is going to surprise themselves if they think that they can really cut down on the IC leaks, and unstated in today's press conference, and dangerously unstated by two former senators, I think, is that they're not going to be able to cut down on congressional leaks. And the reason that's true is because you've got separation of powers. In fact, the Jeffrey Sterling case back in a couple of years ago, that they couldn't actually go after the known suspected congressional leakers, and so they went after Sterling instead. The known suspected congressional leakers from that case are still working for government. Congress is not going to let DOJ go after its own staffers. And so some of the most obvious sources of leaks are not going to be shut down at all. You're going to see a lot more leaking go through Congress at a time when even Republicans in Congress are beginning to turn on Trump. So, again, I don't think DOJ has really thought this through, but it's Jeff Sessions, so I don't expect him to think things through ahead of when he does them.
We'll leave it there. Marcy Wheeler, her website is mtwheel.net. Marcy, thank you. And thank you for joining us on The Real News.